Imagine you had a chance to sit down with someone who lived thousands of years ago, a philosopher, statesman, and playwright, someone who walked the halls of power but also tasted the bitterness of exile. Imagine this person could offer you insights so timeless that they could change the way you see the world today, impacting how you think, feel, and act. What would you give for just an hour of wisdom from such a person? Well, the good news is, you don't have to imagine it, because that's precisely what we're doing today as we delve deep into the letters of Seneca, one of the most insightful Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome. The man behind these life-altering letters, Seneca, was not just a philosopher in an ivory tower. He was an individual deeply engaged in the society and politics of his time. From advising emperors to experiencing the ups and downs of political life, his observations about the human condition weren't academic exercises. They were drawn from the crucible of lived experience, making them as relevant today as they were nearly 2 millennia ago. The Letters from a Stoic, a series of moral epistles to his friend Lucilius, represent some of the most poignant philosophical texts ever penned. In them, Seneca provides practical advice on everything from how to deal with grief and adversity to tips on personal development and ethical considerations. In this video, we're about to embark on a transformative journey through 7 of Seneca's most impactful letters. Each of these letters offers timeless advice, actionable tips, and a profound understanding of human nature that can enrich our lives in unimaginable ways. Stay with me as we unlock the secrets to a fulfilling life, one ancient letter at a time. Continue to act thus, my dear Lucilius. Set yourself free for your own sake. Gather and save your time, which till lately has been forced from you, or filched away, or has merely slipped from your hands. Make yourself believe the truth of my words, that certain moments are torn from us, that some are gently removed, and that others glide beyond our reach. The most disgraceful kind of loss, however, is that due to carelessness. Furthermore, if you will pay close heed to the problem, you will find that the largest portion of our life passes while we are doing ill, a goodly share while we are doing nothing, and the whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. What man can you show me who places any value on his time, who reckons the worth of each day, who understands that he is dying daily? For we are mistaken when we look forward to death. The major portion of death has already passed. Whatever years be behind us are in death's hands. Therefore, Lucilius, do as you write me that you are doing. Hold every hour in your grasp. Lay hold of today's task, and you will not need to depend so much upon tomorrow's. While we are postponing, life speeds by. Nothing, Lucilius, is ours except time. We were entrusted by nature with the ownership of this single thing, so fleeting and slippery that anyone who will can oust us from possession. What fools these mortals be! They allow the cheapest and most useless things, which can easily be replaced, to be charged in the reckoning after they have acquired them. But they never regard themselves as in debt when they have received some of that precious commodity, time, and yet time is the one loan which even a grateful recipient cannot repay. You may desire to know how I, who preach to you so freely, am practicing. I confess frankly, my expense account balances, as you would expect from one who is free-handed but careful. I cannot boast that I waste nothing, but I can at least tell you what I am wasting and the cause and manner of the loss. I can give you the reasons why I am a poor man. My situation, however, is the same as that of many who are reduced to slender means through no fault of their own. Everyone forgives them, but no one comes to their rescue. What is the state of things then? It is this: I do not regard a man as poor, if the little which remains is enough for him. I advise you, however, to keep what is really yours, and you cannot begin too early. For as our ancestors believed, it is too late to spare when you reach the dregs of the cask. Of that which remains at the bottom, the amount is slight, and the quality is vile. Keep on as you have begun, and make all possible haste, so that you may have longer enjoyment of an improved mind, one that is at peace with itself. Doubtless, you will derive enjoyment during the time when you are improving your mind and setting it at peace with itself. But quite different is the pleasure which comes from contemplation when one's mind is so cleansed from every stain that it shines. You remember, of course, what joy you felt when you laid aside the garments of boyhood and donned the man's toga and were escorted to the forum. Nevertheless, you may look for a still greater joy when you have laid aside the mind of boyhood and when wisdom has enrolled you among men. For it is not boyhood that still stays with us, but something worse, boyishness. And this condition is all the more serious because we possess the authority of old age, together with the follies of boyhood, yea, even the follies of infancy. Boys fear trifles, children fear shadows, we fear both. All you need to do is to advance. You will thus understand that some things are less to be dreaded, precisely because they inspire us with great fear. No evil is great which is the last evil of all. Death arrives. It would be a thing to dread if it could remain with you. But death must either not come at all, or else must come and pass away. It is difficult, however, you say, to bring the mind to a point where it can scorn life. But do you not see what trifling reasons impel men to scorn life? One hangs himself before the door of his mistress, another hurls himself from the housetop that he may no longer be compelled to bear the taunts of a bad-tempered master, a third, to be saved from arrest after running away, drives a sword into his vitals. Do you not suppose that virtue will be as efficacious as excessive fear? No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it, or believes that living through many consulships is a great blessing. Rehearse this thought every day, that you may be able to depart from life contentedly, for many men clutch and cling to life, even as those who are carried down a rushing stream clutch and cling to briars and sharp rocks. Most men ebb and flow in wretchedness between the fear of death and the hardships of life. They are unwilling to live, and yet they do not know how to die. For this reason, make life as a whole agreeable to yourself by banishing all worry about it. No good thing renders its possessor happy, unless his mind is reconciled to the possibility of loss. Nothing, however, is lost with less discomfort than that which, when lost, cannot be missed. Therefore, encourage and toughen your spirit against the mishaps that afflict even the most powerful. For example, the fate of Pompey was settled by a boy and a eunuch, that of Crassus by a cruel and insolent Parthian. Gaius Caesar ordered Lepidus to bare his neck for the acts of the tribune Dexter, and he himself offered his own throat to Chaerea. No man has ever been so far advanced by fortune that she did not threaten him as greatly as she had previously indulged him. Do not trust her seeming calm. In a moment the sea is moved to its depths. The very day the ships have made a brave show in the games, they are engulfed. Reflect that a highwayman or an enemy may cut your throat, and though he is not your master, every slave wields the power of life and death over you. Therefore I declare to you, he is Lord of your life that scorns his own. Think of those who have perished through plots in their own home, slain either openly or by guile. You will that just as many have been killed by angry slaves as by angry kings. What matter therefore how powerful he be whom you fear, when everyone possesses the power which inspires your fear? But, you will say, if you should chance to fall into the hands of the enemy, the conqueror will command that you be led away. Yes, whither you are already being led. Why do you voluntarily deceive yourself and require to be told now for the first time what fate it is that you have long been laboring under? Take my word for it, since the day you were born you are being led thither. We must ponder this thought, and thoughts of the like nature, if we desire to be calm as we await that last hour, the fear of which makes all previous hours uneasy. But I must end my letter. Let me share with you the saying which pleased me today. It too is culled from another man's garden. Poverty, brought into conformity with the law of nature, is great wealth. Do you know what limits that law of nature ordains for us? Merely to avert hunger, thirst, and cold. In order to banish hunger and thirst, it is not necessary for you to pay court at the doors of the purse-proud, or to submit to the stern frown, or to the kindness that humiliates. Nor is it necessary for you to scour the seas or go campaigning, Nature's needs are easily provided and ready to hand. It is the superfluous things for which men sweat, the superfluous things that wear our togas threadbare, that force us to grow old in camp, that dash us upon foreign shores. That which is enough is ready to our hands. He who has made a fair compact with poverty is rich. I feel, my dear Lucilius, that I am being not only reformed but transformed. I do not yet, however, assure myself or indulge the hope that there are no elements left in me which need to be changed. Of course, there are many that should be made more compact or made thinner or be brought into greater prominence. And indeed, this very fact is proof that my spirit is altered into something better, that it can see its own faults, of which it was previously ignorant. In certain cases, sick men are congratulated because they themselves have perceived that they are sick. I therefore wish to impart to you this sudden change in myself. I should then begin to place a surer trust in our friendship. The true friendship which hope and fear and self-interest cannot sever. The friendship in which, and for the sake of which men meet death. I can show you many who have lacked, not a friend, but a friendship. This, however, cannot possibly happen when souls are drawn together by identical inclinations into an alliance of honorable desires. And why can it not happen? Because in such cases men know that they have all things in common, especially their troubles. You cannot conceive what distinct progress I notice that each day brings to me. And when you say, "Give me also a share in these gifts which you have found so helpful," I reply that I am anxious to heap all these privileges upon you, and that I am glad to learn in order that I may teach. Nothing will ever please me, no matter how excellent or beneficial, if I must retain the knowledge of it to myself. And if wisdom were given me under the express condition that it must be kept hidden and not uttered, I should refuse it. No good thing is pleasant to possess, without friends to share it. I shall therefore send to you the actual books, and in order that you may not waste time in searching here and there for profitable topics, I shall mark certain passages, so that you can turn at once to those which I approve and admire. Of course, however, the living voice and the intimacy of a common life will help you more than the written word. You must go to the scene of action first, because men put more faith in their eyes than in their ears. And second, because the way is long if one follows precepts, but short and helpful if one follows patterns. Cleanthes could not have been the express image of Zeno if he had merely heard his lectures. He shared in his life, saw into his hidden purposes, and watched him to see whether he lived according to his own rules. Plato, Aristotle, and the whole throng of sages who were destined to go each his different way derived more benefit from the character than from the words of Socrates. It was not the classroom of Epicurus, but living together under the same roof that made great men of Metrodorus, Hermachus, and Polyaenus. Therefore I summon you, not merely that you may derive benefit, but that you may confer benefit, for we can assist each other greatly. Meanwhile, I owe you my little daily contribution. You shall be told what pleased me today in the writings of Hecato. It is these words: "What progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." That was indeed a great benefit. Such a person can never be alone. You may be sure that such a man is a friend to all mankind. It is the month of December, and yet the city is at this very moment in a sweat. License is given to the general merrymaking. Everything resounds with mighty preparations, as if the Saturnalia differed at all from the usual business day. So true it is that the difference is nil, that I regard as correct the remark of the man who said, "Once December was a month, now it is a year." If I had you with me, I should be glad to consult you and find out what you think should be done, whether we ought to make no change in our daily routine, or whether, in order not to be out of sympathy with the ways of the public, we should dine in gayer fashion and off the toga. As it is now, we Romans have changed our dress for the sake of pleasure and holiday making, though in former times that was only customary, when the state was disturbed and had fallen on evil days. I am sure that, if I know you right, playing the part of an umpire, you would have wished that we should be neither like the liberty-capped sea throng in all ways, nor in all ways unlike them, unless, perhaps, this is just a season when we ought to lay down the law to the soul, and bid it be alone in refraining from pleasures just when the whole mob has let itself go in pleasures. For this is the surest proof which a man can get of his own constancy, if he neither seeks the things which are seductive and allure him to luxury, nor is led into them. It shows much more courage to remain dry and sober when the mob is drunk and vomiting, but it shows greater self-control to refuse to withdraw oneself, and to do what the crowd does, but in a different way, thus neither making oneself conspicuous, nor becoming one of the crowd. For one may keep holiday without extravagance. I am so firmly determined, however, to test the constancy of your mind that, drawing from the teachings of great men, I shall give you also a lesson. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" It is precisely in times of immunity from care that the soul should toughen itself beforehand for occasions of greater stress, and it is while fortune is kind that it should fortify itself against her violence. In days of peace the soldier performs maneuvers, throws up earthworks with no enemy in sight, and wearies himself by gratuitous toil, in order that he may be equal to unavoidable toil. If you would not have a man flinch when the crisis comes, train him before it comes. Such is the course which those men have followed who, in their imitation of poverty, have every month come almost to want, that they might never recoil from what they had so often rehearsed. You need not suppose that I mean meals like timons or paupers' huts or any other device which luxurious millionaires use to beguile the tedium of their lives. Let the pallet be a real one, and the coarse cloak. Let the bread be hard and grimy. Endure all this for 3 or 4 days at a time, sometimes for more, so that it may be a test of yourself instead of a mere hobby. Then I assure you, my dear Lucilius, you will leap for joy when filled with a pennyworth of food, and you will understand that a man's peace of mind does not depend upon fortune, for even when angry she grants enough for our needs. There is no reason, however, why you should think that you are doing anything great, for you will merely be doing what many thousands of slaves and many thousands of poor men are doing every day. But you may credit yourself with this item, that you will not be doing it under compulsion, and that it will be as easy for you to endure it permanently as to make the experiment from time to time. Let us practice our strokes on the dummy. Let us become intimate with poverty so that fortune may not catch us off our guard. We shall be rich with all the more comfort if we once learn how far poverty is from being a burden. Even Epicurus, the teacher of pleasure, used to observe stated intervals, during which he satisfied his hunger in niggardly fashion. He wished to see whether he thereby fell short of full and complete happiness, and if so, by what amount he fell short, and whether this amount was worth purchasing at the price of great effort. At any rate, he makes such a statement in the well-known letter written to Polyaenus in the archonship of Carinus. Indeed, he boasts that he himself lived on less than a penny, but that Metrodorus, whose progress was not yet so great, needed a whole penny. Do you think that there can be fullness on such fare? Yes, and there is pleasure also, not that shifty and fleeting pleasure which needs a fillip now and then, but a pleasure that is steadfast and sure. For though water, barley meal, and crusts of barley bread are not a cheerful diet, yet it is the highest kind of pleasure to be able to derive pleasure from this sort of food, and to have reduced one's needs to that modicum which no unfairness of fortune can snatch away. Even prison fare is more generous, and those who have been set apart for capital punishment are not so meanly fed by the man who is to execute them. Therefore, what a noble soul must one have, to descend of one's own free will to a diet which even those who have been sentenced to death have not to fear. This is indeed forestalling the spear thrusts of fortune. So begin, my dear Lucilius, to follow the custom of these men, and set apart certain days on which you shall withdraw from your business and make yourself at home with the scantiest fare. Establish business relations with poverty. Dare, O my friend, to scorn the sight of wealth, and mold thyself to kinship with thy God. For he alone is in kinship with God who has scorned wealth. Of course, I do not forbid you to possess it, but I would have you reach the point at which you possess it dauntlessly. This can be accomplished only by persuading yourself that you can live happily without it, as well as with it, and by regarding riches always as likely to elude you. But now I must begin to fold up my letter. Settle your debts first, you cry. Here is a draft on Epicurus, he will pay down the sum. Ungoverned anger begets madness. You cannot help knowing the truth of these words, since you have had not only slaves, but also enemies. But indeed this emotion blazes out against all sorts of persons. It springs from love as much as from hate, and shows itself not less in serious matters than in jest and sport. And it makes no difference how important the provocation may be, but into what kind of soul it penetrates. Similarly with fire, it does not matter how great is the flame, but what it falls upon. For solid timbers have repelled a very great fire. Conversely, dry and easily inflammable stuff nourishes the slightest spark into a conflagration. So it is with anger, my dear Lucilius. The outcome of a mighty anger is madness, and hence anger should be avoided, not merely that we may escape excess, but that we may have a healthy mind. You are doing an excellent thing, one which will be wholesome for you, if, as you write me, you are persisting in your effort to attain sound understanding. It is foolish to pray for this when you can acquire it from yourself. We do not need to uplift our hands towards heaven, or to beg the keeper of a temple to let us approach his idol's ear, as if in this way our prayers were more likely to be heard. God is near you, he is with you, he is within you. This is what I mean, Lucilius. A Holy Spirit indwells within us, one who marks our good and bad deeds and is our guardian. As we treat this Spirit, so are we treated by it. Indeed, no man can be good without the help of God. Can one rise superior to fortune unless God helps him to rise? He it is that gives noble and upright counsel. In each good man a God doth dwell, but what God know we not. If ever you have come upon a grove that is full of ancient trees, which have grown to an unusual height, shutting out a view of the sky by a veil of pleached and intertwining branches, then the loftiness of the forest, the seclusion of the spot, and your marvel at the thick, unbroken shade in the midst of the open spaces will prove to you the presence of deity. Or if a cave, made by the deep crumbling of the rocks, holds up a mountain on its arch, a place not built with hands but hollowed out into such spaciousness by natural causes, your soul will be deeply moved by a certain intimation of the existence of God. We worship the sources of mighty rivers. We erect altars at places where great streams burst suddenly from hidden sources. We adore springs of hot water as divine, and consecrate certain pools because of their dark waters or their immeasurable depth. If you see a man who is unterrified in the midst of dangers, untouched by desires, happy in adversity, peaceful amid the storm, who looks down upon men from a higher plane and views the gods on a footing of equality, will not a feeling of reverence for him steal over you? Will you not say, "This quality is too great and too lofty to be regarded as resembling this petty body in which it dwells? A divine power has descended upon that man." When a soul rises superior to other souls, when it is under control, when it passes through every experience as if it were of small account, when it smiles at our fears and at our prayers, it is stirred by a force from heaven. A thing like this cannot stand upright unless it be propped by the divine. Therefore a greater part of it abides in that place from whence it came down to earth. Just as the rays of the sun do indeed touch the earth, but still abide at the source from which they are sent, even so the great and hallowed soul which has come down in order that we may have a nearer knowledge of divinity, does indeed associate with us, but still cleaves to its origin. On that source it depends. Thither it turns its gaze and strives to go, and it concerns itself with our doings only as a being superior to ourselves. What then is such a soul? One which is resplendent with no external good, but only with its own. For what is more foolish than to praise in a man the qualities which come from without? And what is more insane than to marvel at characteristics which may at the next instant be passed on to someone else? A golden bit does not make a better horse. The lion with gilded mane, in process of being trained and forced by weariness to endure the decoration, is sent into the arena in quite a different way from the wild lion whose spirit is unbroken. The latter indeed bold in his attack as nature wished him to be, impressive because of his wild appearance, and it is his glory that none can look upon him without fear, is favored in preference to the other lion, that languid and gilded brute. No man ought to glory except in that which is his own. We praise a vine if it makes the shoots teem with increase, if by its weight it bends to the ground the very poles which hold its fruit. Would any man prefer to this vine one from which golden grapes and golden leaves hang down? In a vine the virtue peculiarly its own is fertility. In man also we should praise that which is his own. Suppose that he has a retinue of comely slaves and a beautiful house, that his farm is large and large his income. None of these things is in the man himself, they are all on the outside. Praise the quality in him which cannot be given or snatched away, that which is the peculiar property of the man. Do you ask what this is? It is soul and reason brought to perfection in the soul. For man is a reasoning animal, therefore man's highest good is attained, if he has fulfilled the good for which nature designed him at birth. And what is it which this reason demands of him? The easiest thing in the world, to live in accordance with his own nature, but this is turned into a hard task by the general madness of mankind. We push one another into vice, and how can a man be recalled to salvation when he has none to restrain him, and all mankind to urge him on? I received great pleasure from your letter. Kindly allow me to use these words in their everyday meaning, without insisting upon their Stoic import. For we Stoics hold that pleasure is a vice. Very likely it is a vice. But we are accustomed to use the word when we wish to indicate a happy state of mind. I am aware that if we test words by our formula, even pleasure is a thing of ill repute, and joy can be attained only by the wise. For joy is an elation of spirit, of a spirit which trusts in the goodness and truth of its own possessions. The common usage, however, is that we derive great joy from a friend's position as consul, or from his marriage, or from the birth of his child. But these events, so far from being matters of joy, are more often the beginnings of sorrow to come. No, it is a characteristic of real joy that it never ceases and never changes into its opposite. Accordingly, when our Virgil speaks of the evil joys of the mind, his words are eloquent, but not strictly appropriate, for no joy can be evil. He has given the name joy to pleasures, and has thus expressed his meaning, for he has conveyed the idea that men take delight in their own evil. Nevertheless, I was not wrong in saying that I received great pleasure from your letter, for although an ignorant man may derive joy, if the cause be an honorable one, yet since his emotion is wayward and is likely soon to take another direction, I call it pleasure. For it is inspired by an opinion concerning a spurious good. It exceeds control and is carried to excess. But to return to the subject, let me tell you what delighted me in your letter. You have your words under control. You are not carried away by your language, or borne beyond the limits which you have determined upon. Many writers are tempted by the charm of some alluring phrase to some topic other than that which they had set themselves to discuss. But this has not been so in your case. All your words are compact and suited to the subject. You say all that you wish, and you mean still more than you say. This is a proof of the importance of your subject matter, showing that your mind, as well as your words, contains nothing superfluous or bombastic. I do, however, find some metaphors, not indeed daring ones, but the kind which have stood the test of use. I find similes also, of course, if anyone forbids us to use them, maintaining that poets alone have that privilege. He has not apparently read any of our ancient prose writers, who had not yet learned to affect a style that should win applause. For those writers whose eloquence was simple and directed only towards proving their case, are full of comparisons, and I think that these are necessary, not for the same reason which makes them necessary for the poets, but in order that they may serve as props to our feebleness, to bring both speaker and listener face to face with the subject under discussion. For example, I am at this very moment reading Sextius. He is a keen man and a philosopher who, though he writes in Greek, has the Roman standards of ethics. One of his similes appealed especially to me, that of an army marching in hollow square in a place where the enemy might be expected to appear from any quarter, ready for battle. This, said he, is just what the wise man ought to do. He should have all his fighting qualities deployed on every side, so that wherever the attack threatens, there his supports may be ready to hand and may obey the captain's command without confusion. This is what we notice in armies which serve under great leaders. We see how all the troops simultaneously understand their general's orders, since they are so arranged that a signal given by one man passes down the ranks of cavalry and infantry at the same moment. This, he declares, is still more necessary for men like ourselves, for soldiers have often feared an enemy without reason, and the march which they thought most dangerous has in fact been most secure. But folly brings no repose. Fear haunts it both in the van and in the rear of the column, and both flanks are in a panic. Folly is pursued and confronted by peril. It blenches at everything. It is unprepared. It is frightened even by auxiliary troops. But the wise man is fortified against all inroads. He is alert. He will not retreat before the attack of poverty, or of sorrow, or of disgrace, or of pain. He will walk undaunted both against them and among them. We human beings are fettered and weakened by many vices. We have wallowed in them for a long time, and it is hard for us to be cleansed. We are not merely defiled, we are dyed by them. But to refrain from passing from one figure to another, I will raise this question, which I often consider in my own heart. Why is it that folly holds us with such an insistent grasp? It is primarily because we do not combat it strongly enough, because we do not struggle towards salvation with all our might. Secondly, because we do not put sufficient trust in the discoveries of the wise and do not drink in their words with open hearts. We approach this great problem in too trifling a spirit. But how can a man learn, in the struggle against his vices, an amount that is enough, if the time which he gives to learning is only the amount left over from his vices? None of us goes deep below the surface. We skim the top only, and we regard the smattering of time spent in the search for wisdom as enough and to spare for a busy man. What hinders us most of all is that we are too readily satisfied with ourselves. If we meet with someone who calls us good men, or sensible men, or holy men, we see ourselves in his description, not content with praise in moderation. We accept everything that shameless flattery heaps upon us, as if it were our due. We agree with those who declare us to be the best and wisest of men, although we know that they are given to much lying. And we are so self-complacent that we desire praise for certain actions when we are especially addicted to the very opposite. Yonder person hears himself called most gentle when he is inflicting tortures, or most generous when he is engaged in looting, or most temperate when he is in the midst of drunkenness and lust. Thus it follows that we are unwilling to be reformed, just because we believe ourselves to be the best of men. Alexander was roaming as far as India, ravaging tribes that were but little known, even to their neighbors. During the blockade of a certain city, while he was reconnoitering the walls and hunting for the weakest spot in the fortifications, he was wounded by an arrow. Nevertheless, he long continued the siege, intent on finishing what he had begun. The pain of his wound, however, as the surface became dry, and as the flow of blood was checked, increased. His leg gradually became numb as he sat his horse, and finally, when he was forced to withdraw, he exclaimed, "All men swear that I am the son of Jupiter, but this wound cries out that I am mortal." Let us also act in the same way. Each man, according to his lot in life, is stultified by flattery. We should say to him who flatters us, You call me a man of sense, but I understand how many of the things which I crave are useless, and how many of the things which I desire will do me harm. I have not even the knowledge which satiety teaches to animals, of what should be the measure of my food or my drink. I do not yet know how much I can hold. I shall now show you how you may know that you are not wise. The wise man is joyful, happy and calm, unshaken. He lives on a plane with the gods. Now go, question yourself. If you are never downcast, if your mind is not harassed by my apprehension through anticipation of what is to come, if day and night your soul keeps on its even and unswerving course, upright and content with itself, then you have attained to the greatest good that mortals can possess. If, however, you seek pleasures of all kinds in all directions, you must know that you are as far short of wisdom as you are short of joy. Joy is the goal which you desire to reach, but you are wandering from the path. If you expect to reach your goal while you are in the midst of riches and official titles. In other words, if you seek joy in the midst of cares, these objects for which you strive so eagerly, as if they would give you happiness and pleasure, are merely causes of grief. All men of this stamp, I maintain, are pressing on in pursuit of joy, but they do not know where they may obtain a joy that is both great and enduring. One person seeks it in feasting and self-indulgence, another in canvassing for honors and in being surrounded by a throng of clients, another in his mistress, another in idle display of culture and in literature that has no power to heal. All these men are led astray by delights which are deceptive and short-lived, like drunkenness, for example, which pays for a single hour of hilarious madness by a sickness of many days, or like applause and the popularity of enthusiastic approval which are gained and atoned for at the cost of great mental disquietude. Reflect therefore on this, that the effect of wisdom is a joy that is unbroken and continuous. The mind of the wise man is like the ultralunar firmament. Eternal calm pervades that region. You have then a reason for wishing to be wise, if the wise man is never deprived of joy. This joy springs only from the knowledge that you possess the virtues. None but the brave, the just, the self-restrained can rejoice. And when you query, what do you mean? Do not the foolish and the wicked also rejoice? I reply, no more than lions who have caught their prey. When men have wearied themselves with wine and lust, when night fails them before their debauch is done, when the pleasures which they have heaped upon a body that is too small to hold them begin to fester, at such times they utter in their wretchedness those lines of Virgil, "Thou knowest how, amid false glittering joys." We spent that last of nights. Pleasure lovers spend every night amid false glittering joys, and just as if it were their last. But the joy which comes to the gods, and to those who imitate the gods, is not broken off, nor does it cease. But it would surely cease were it borrowed from without. Just because it is not in the power of another to bestow, neither is it subject to another's whims. That which fortune has not given, she cannot take away. Every day and every hour reveal to us what a nothing we are, and remind us with some fresh evidence that we have forgotten our weakness. Then, as we plan for eternity, they compel us to look over our shoulders at death. Do you ask me what this preamble means? It refers to Cornelius Seneca, a distinguished and capable Roman knight whom you knew. From humble beginnings, he had advanced himself to fortune, and the rest of the path already lay downhill before him. For it is easier to grow in dignity than to make a start, and money is very slow to come where there is poverty. Until it can creep out of that, it goes halting. Seneca was already bordering upon wealth, helped in that direction by two very powerful assets, knowing how to make money and how to keep it also. Either one of these gifts might have made him a rich man. Here was a person who lived most simply, careful of health and wealth alike. He had, as usual, called upon me early in the morning, and had then spent the whole day, even up to nightfall, at the bedside of a friend who was seriously and hopelessly ill. After a comfortable dinner, he was suddenly seized with an acute attack of quinsy, and with the breath clogged tightly in his swollen throat, barely lived until daybreak. So within a very few hours after the time when he had been performing all the duties of a sound and healthy man, he passed away. He who was venturing investments by land and sea, who had also entered public life and left no type of business untried, during the very realization of financial success and during the very onrush of the money that flowed into his coffers, was snatched from the world. Graft now thy pears, Melibæus, and set out thy vines in their order. But how foolish it is to set out one's life when one is not even owner of the morrow, or what madness it is to plot out far-reaching hopes. To say, I will buy and build, loan and call in money, win titles of honor, and then, old and full of years, I will surrender myself to a life of ease. Believe me when I say that everything is doubtful, even for those who are prosperous. No one has any right to draw for himself upon the future. The very thing that we grasp slips through our hands, and chance cuts into the actual hour which we are crowding so full. Time does indeed roll along by fixed law, but as in darkness, and what is it to me whether nature's course is sure, when my own is unsure? We plan distant voyages and long postponed homecomings after roaming over foreign shores. We plan for military service and the slow rewards of hard campaigns. We canvass for governorships and the promotions of one office after another, and all the while death stands at our side. But since we never think of it except as it affects our neighbor, instances of mortality press upon us day by day to remain in our minds only as long as they stir our wonder. Yet what is more foolish than to wonder that something which may happen every day has happened on any one day? There is indeed a limit fixed for us, just where the remorseless law of fate has fixed it, but none of us knows how near he is to this limit. Therefore let us so order our minds as if we had come to the very end. Let us postpone nothing, let us balance life's account every day. The greatest flaw in life is that it is always imperfect, and that a certain part of it is postponed. One who daily puts the finishing touches to his life is never in want of time. And yet, from this want arise fear and a craving for the future which eats away the mind. There is nothing more wretched than worry over the outcome of future events. As to the amount or the nature of that which remains, our troubled minds are set aflutter with unaccountable fear. How then shall we avoid this vacillation? In one way only, if there be no reaching forward in our life, if it is withdrawn into itself. For he only is anxious about the future, to whom the present is unprofitable. But when I have paid my soul its due, when a soundly balanced mind knows that a day differs not a whit from eternity, whatever days or problems the future may bring, then the soul looks forth from lofty heights and laughs heartily to itself when it thinks upon the ceaseless succession of the ages. For what disturbance can result from the changes and the instability of chance, if you are sure in the face of that which is unsure? Therefore, my dear Lucilius, begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life. He who has thus prepared himself, he whose daily life has been a rounded whole, is easy in his mind. But those who live for hope alone find that the immediate future always slips from their grasp, and that greed steals along in its place, and the fear of death, a curse which lays a curse upon everything else. Thence came that most debased of prayers, in which Mekanasa does not refuse to suffer weakness, deformity, and as a climax the pain of crucifixion, provided only that he may prolong the breath of life amid these sufferings. Fashion me with a palsied hand, weak of foot, and a cripple. Build upon me a crook-backed hump, shake my teeth till they rattle. All is well if my life remains. Save, oh save it, I pray you, though I sit on the piercing cross. There he is, praying for that which, if it had befallen him, would be the most pitiable thing in the world, and seeking a postponement of suffering as if he were asking for life. I should deem him most despicable had he wished to live up to the very time of crucifixion. Nay, he cries, you may weaken my body if you will only leave the breath of life in my battered and ineffective carcass. Maim me if you will, but allow me, misshapen and deformed as I may be, just a little more time in the world. You may nail me up and set my seat upon the piercing cross. Is it worthwhile to weigh down upon one's own wound and hang impaled upon a gibbet, that one may but postpone something which is the balm of troubles, the end of punishment? Is it worth all this to possess the breath of life only to give it up? What would you ask for Maecenas but the indulgence of heaven? What does he mean by such womanish and indecent verse? What does he mean by making terms with panic fear? What does he mean by begging so vilely for life? He cannot ever have heard Virgil read the words, "Tell me, is death so wretched as that?" He asks for the climax of suffering, and what is still harder to bear? Prolongation and extension of suffering. And what does he gain thereby? Merely the boon of a longer existence. But what sort of life is a lingering death? Can anyone be found who would prefer wasting away in pain, dying limb by limb, or letting out his life drop by drop, rather than expiring once for all? Can any man be found willing to be fastened to the accursed tree, a long, sickly, already deformed, swelling with ugly tumors on chest and shoulders, and draw the breath of life amid long drawn-out agony? I think he would have many excuses for dying even before mounting the cross. Deny now, if you can, that nature is very generous in making death inevitable. Many men have been prepared to enter upon still more shameful bargains, to betray friends in order to live longer themselves, or voluntarily to debase their children, and so enjoy the light of day which is witness of all their sins. We must get rid of this craving for life, and learn that it makes no difference when your suffering comes, because at some time you are bound to suffer. The point is, not how long you live, but how nobly you live, and often this living nobly means that you cannot live long. As we wrap up this illuminating exploration into Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, it's vital to take a moment to reflect on the transformative lessons that this ancient philosopher has offered us. Today, we've dissected a curated selection of letters that cover an expansive range of topics, from the essence of time to the intricacies of human relationships, from the simple life to our complex inner worlds. These messages, penned nearly 2 millennia ago, provide indispensable guideposts for anyone committed to the journey of personal development and philosophical enrichment. Time is our most precious resource, as discussed in Letter 1 on Saving Time. Seneca urges us to be miserly with our time, to use it judiciously, and to remember that every moment spent is a moment we'll never get back. This isn't just a Stoic idea, it's a universally relevant concept. In an era where distractions abound and the world moves at breakneck speed, learning to manage and value time efficiently is more crucial than ever. Then we move to Letter 4, on the terrors of death, which invites us to explore our mortality. Seneca argues that understanding and accepting the inevitable can free us to live more wholly and more authentically. The idea is not to become morbidly obsessed with death, but to use it as a compass that directs us to live each day with purpose and clarity. Our exploration took us next to the beauty of shared wisdom in Letter 6 on sharing knowledge. Here, Seneca suggests that the knowledge we gain increases in value when we share it with others. In today's interconnected world where information flows freely through social media platforms, blogs, and videos like this one, sharing knowledge isn't just a virtue, but a responsibility we all share. Then we delved into Letter 18, on festivals and fasting, a poignant message about embracing a simpler life. In a society consumed by consumerism, where we often mistake wants for needs, Seneca reminds us of the importance of contentment and voluntary discomfort. This practice enables us to appreciate what we have and prepares us for times when we might face actual discomfort or hardship. In Letter 41, on the God within us, we encountered the notion of the divine quality of human rationality. The idea isn't merely abstract, it's a call to elevate our thinking and actions to reflect our highest potential. Personal development isn't just about skills and achievements, it's about reaching into the depths of our being and bringing forth the innate wisdom we all possess. Our journey also led us to Letter 59 on pleasure and joy, a letter that focuses on the importance of meaningful relationships and true joy as opposed to fleeting pleasures. Seneca distinguishes between superficial happiness and the deep-rooted joy that comes from authentic connections with others, echoing sentiments that are vitally important in an age where social media often seems to drive us apart more than it brings us together. Finally, we examined Letter 101 on the futility of planning ahead. In a world obsessed with planning every minute detail, Seneca asks us to accept the impermanence of life and to adapt to change. This Stoic principle is perhaps the most freeing of all, because it offers a mental framework that can weather any storm life may throw our way. As we draw this exploration to a close, understand that these words and lessons from Seneca are not merely ink on paper or pixels on a screen. They are echoes of millennia, whispers from the past that can still shape the contours of our hearts and minds today. Take one concept, just one, and hold it close to you. Let it stir your soul and guide your actions. For you don't merely listen to Stoic wisdom, you embody it. You are the living, breathing expression of potential, ever on the precipice of profound transformation. Don't walk away unchanged. Make today the day that you felt something awaken within you, a recognition not of who you are, but of who you could become. For if even one letter, one line, one thought moves you to a life of deeper meaning, then every syllable has served its purpose. This is your life, a fleeting, priceless tapestry of moments. Don't leave it unfinished. The wisest journey is not to the horizon, but inward, into the uncharted landscapes of your own being. May your journey be your masterpiece.